YouTube, how's it going? Chrono Knight back here with another video. And for today, we're going to be going over the most recent ban list for Chaos Galaxy. Recent ban list just dropped. It's only been a matter of a few days, I think barely even a week that the new ban list has been out. And I'm going to do my reaction to it, talk about some cards, and maybe even throw in a bonus tier list at the end. So stick around for that. But yeah, without further ado, let's hop right in. So first thing I'm going to do is go over the ban section. The Each card that has like a little star indicator on it is like the newest change. So I'll be sure to highlight that. And anything without a star is something that's already been on the ban list. So let's go ahead and jump right in. First things first, we have Shape Knight Ictorious, which is fully banned. So you can run 0 copies of it now in the deck. My first reaction to this was I kind of understand, but I think a half ban would have did the job. I think you really only needed to drop this down by half in order to get the impact there. I think dropping it to 0 is going to make Shape Knights virtually an unplayable deck, but we'll talk about that later. Because they also lost one of their partners right here, Lightbeam Rider, which has been on the ban list for 2 cycles now. Super good Syndian card. Increased the power level and the consistency very high. This combined with Lionel allows you to play light or any Syndian creature, but most consistently was Lionel. You can play this for 3 stars, and you can reduce any creature on the field by 100 times the number of Syndian creatures that you have, which if you're already pulling off this combo, that's minus 200 on any creature automatically. And with a power level of 310, that means it could kill anything in the game. Omnius, Enoch, Subero, you name it. Anything could be virtually sniped by this card. So understandable why it's banned, but I do miss it to power up the Syndian cards. Darkspark Diabolus being banned. I kind of get this too. I was a little confused by it though. Not gonna lie, just because I think Darkspark wasn't really ran as much. I think it's an overrated card personally. I think ditching 4 cards just to basically get a cheaper 6-star creature. Some decks it works good, some decks it doesn't, and a lot of people were just splashing it just because they thought it was very splashable. Personally, I don't think it's a very splashable card. If anything, I think it's more of like very niche depending on what you're trying to do. So if you're running like a Soulstrom deck or a Sindel deck, or sometimes it even helps you mill down for other cards so that you can use things like Forces of Justice, stuff like that. It kind of makes a little bit more sense. But too often than not, I see people milling things like Beast of the Black Hole, Galaxy Crash, or some other piece of their combo that they need. And I think that's just too big of a drawback. So yeah, I didn't really affect me too much that it's banned. Beast of the Conjurers, I understand why it's still banned, as this card was placed in pretty much every deck, and just get zones, just keep getting zones. So I understand. Jakra, let's all rejoice here. I had to zoom in on that one. Yeah, Jakra being banned is definitely a good call here. That card is just too powerful compared to the rest of the field, the rest of what the cards can do. Being able to be revived as a free play from the grave, shuffle a card, and swing for 4 points all in one turn is just very absurd. And then the fact that you can shuffle any card increases its utility. And the idea of shuffling versus killing a card is also way more impactful for a lot of decks, as some decks doesn't mind a card being killed, but when it's shuffled, you're like, all right, I might not see that card for the rest of the game. And that could be game changing for a lot of decks. Mo being banned, I definitely like this one as well, as it was basically just an activator sniper, which was kind of cheeky, a little cheap in my opinion, especially because there's only a handful of good activators in the game in general. And so just the thought process of like, hey, I don't want my opponent to have any defensive utility as far as activators is concerned. So I'm just going to use this card to snipe it out of its hand. And even if they don't have it, I get to peek and get hand knowledge, which is very huge, especially in a tournament setting, as that pretty much can outline how you should approach the rest of the game. And that can really put your opponent at a disadvantage. Max Sprout being banned, I kind of thought a limit was okay. I mean, I understand, as it was just basically a free play from hand, but that was kind of the nature of Shias in general, is that they do want to play kind of like a hyper aggressive, fast paced type of play style, and Max Sprout was just a really good engine piece to do that. So I would have preferred a limit, but I understand why the ban is happening too. Rowdy being banned, I completely understand. Has some synergy with Serp here, as you kill this card and it gives you stars, and then it also helps you free play one of the strongest creatures in the game in Great Serpent of the Falls. And so I think the thought process was to just break that combo and try to uh, take the power level down for a lot of decks and just reset some things. Same kind of concept with Gla, as it's a really good removal piece, 1 star, super cheap and searchable with the Gaia's ability. This plus the tree, you're gonna pop a card and draw 2 cards, which is pretty strong. Parallel universe, upside down realm, all of these different cards. Just read their effects. You'll understand why they're banned. Don't want to dive too much into those. Deep Space Lighthouse was an interesting ban to me, as I thought it would just go to more of a limit than a ban. It wasn't even really seeing that much utility, even in the past couple of tournaments, as there's good variety as far as decks are concerned, but even the decks that felt like they were the best deck may or may not have run Lighthouse, and I didn't see it being super, super impactful. I think this particular change was just to really, really shake things up and kind of force players to be a little bit more creative, more so than the card just being super, super overpowered or anything like that. Shockwave 8 being banned is super interesting too, because when you talk about a tournament setting, Shockwave 8 was one of those cards that kind of kept Polysium in check. And so I'm kind of concerned about how the deck is gonna perform now that Shockwave 8 is not there, and how decks are gonna try to combat um, Polysium, especially in a best of 3. So yeah, that one was kind of a shocker. Tomb, I think, was the same feeling as Deep Space Lighthouse, which is basically we want to shake things up, just kind of affect the ability to have some recursion. Personally, I think you can still get the same effect if it was just half banned, as the card itself does require some strategy. It does require you to manage your resources, as you can't just shotgun and get a free play similar to Phantom Matter, which I understand why that's banned. But Abomination Tomb is more so, hey, I have to make an investment and try to get this card back that I think will be useful in this spot. Um, and so, a half ban I think would have been a little bit more understandable. The Shias Moon, completely understandable why that's still there, as the draw engine for Shias was really, really out of control. And this puts hand advantage disproportionately better to the Shias player who has the moons up, especially when it was at 2 copies. Point Turret and Shockwave 5, kind of understandable. Point Turret was just basically like, hey, if you attack me, I'm going to steal all your points. So you did all that effort to swing and clear my board, and I'm just going to steal all your effort in 1 card, which is a little overpowered if you ask me. Monument and AAA. Now AAA was more so a shock to me, but Monument I can kind of understand, as it was starting to become a staple. Where if any deck has some form of draw, you play this in your deck so that you can draw too. And then it just got to a point where everyone was just running 1 or 2 copies of this. So this kind of shakes up the meta a little bit and forces people to be a little bit more creative with how they're going to thin out their deck. And I'm going to reference that a little bit later when we talk about the tier list. AAA was basically cancel any activator. It was originally limited. So to see it banned is slightly concerning, but the reason I'm not so concerned is that the power level of pretty much every deck has been dropped down. And we're kind of back on even playing field, at least for right now, until the meta kind of shakes out. And I'll talk a little bit more about what I think are the best position decks right now, just off of my first impression. Going into the half band, so we have Serp cut to 1. I really like that, as the Serpent and Polyphos package was just an engine of itself, that you could take those 4 to 5 cards and place them in a deck and increase the power level instantly with the 8 star that could come down and negate cards and swing for 5. Super powerful. Super Flipper being cut to 1. I really like this particular pick, because Gaia's players were just really discouraged in tournament settings in best of 3, as a lot of people would just side in 2 copies of this, which is basically like, hey, I'm going to kill one of your Gaia's creatures for free, play a 8 star creature, and hit you in the face for 4 points, all in 1 turn. And just really get an advantage that way. So I like it being cut down to 1. It kind of decreases the offensive power of the Gaia's player, which forces them to be a little bit more creative when getting their points. However, it does also help them in a best of 3 setting, where they don't have to worry about 2 copies of this just coming down and crushing them. Pelfam being cut to 1, really like that idea as well, as it was starting to become somewhat of a staple. It's just a super good card in general, so you kind of want to tone the power levels down sometimes. Scoria being cut to 1 was an interesting thing. However, I completely understand, as if you make a sticky Scoria, especially at 2 copies, this became a really, really powerful draw engine. Imagine you play this in another Shias creature, which normally used to be Mag Sprout, his partner in crime, and you can play a Firewall, and now you're going to draw 2. And then if you get another Firewall, now you're drawing 3. And if you get a Planetary Field, now you're drawing 4. And so you're getting +4 potentially depending on how cracked your hand is. But the concept is that if you keep this on board, you're getting significant hand advantage. And I think the idea was to just tone that down for the Shias players, especially with Shias being one of the best decks in format over the past couple of tournaments. Shape Knight scoring being cut to 1. Interesting. I kind of think this has the same effect as Super Flooper, as against Shape Knight players, people would side in Scorn, and you play it down for 4 stars, and it could clear a Shape Knight board, because if they have another Shape Knight card and any other creature, as long as the star counts match up with the ability, you can pop both of those cards, and you get a body that can swing for 2 points, which can be super super oppressive. It kind of sucks for the Shape Knight players or the Shape Knight lovers in general, as they have one less Shape Knight, which is just really decreasing the power level. Um, and but I guess it kind of helps them as well, because they don't have to worry about it. Now these next 2 hits make me just feel like Shape Knights is just more of an engine now and not really a deck. Because you have Trong to 1. Trong was your searcher. It was your like starter card. As you place this and you send a 1 to 3 star uh Shape Knight into the grave, usually Lionel, because you only have 1 copy of Trong now anyway. And then search for either a Scorn or a Hexator. Even though Hexator is unbanned, so you have 2 copies of that, you have a little less consistency, as you need both conditions to be met in order to use the ability. So you can't just discard Lionel and not have anyone to search for. You have to have both conditions met, to my understanding. Polygram. Polygram was basically like the archetype's Abomination Tomb, as well as like a power increase. And so seeing that cut to 1 copy also hurts the consistency. And Shape Knights, I think, are really hurting. I mean, you're missing your boss monster. You're missing one of your best extenders in Light Beam Rider. And then 2 of the core pieces have been cut in half. And then one of the strongest extenders is harder to search for now that Trong has been at 1 since the past couple of ban lists. Galaxy Crash is self-explanatory, super powerful card, just to keep the game in balance, along with Beast of the Black Hole, Planetary Field. It makes sense to have these at like 1 copy. Relic Mine, I kind of understand as well. You get a free +1. So just keeping things a little bit more balanced. Time Flash Portal was an interesting one. I did not see that coming, as I felt like Time Flash Portal still required a lot of skill. Although you could slap it down, it seemed like you wanted to be really, really wise about when you use that investment, as Time Flash Portal is usually used to help you creep through and get some points. And then next we have Abandonment. Abandonment is a card that was sided against any multi-planet decks. So any decks that are running more than 1 planet, Abandonment is very, very useful in a tournament setting for Game 2 and Game 3, as you can destroy any creature that doesn't come from its original planet. And kind of self-explanatory. So I understand the limit to 1, and I'm not mad at that at all. It kind of seems like across the board it was an idea, considering Flooper, Scorn, and Abandonment, things like that, to just make everyone kind of back to ground zero and start from there. Soul Shroom being half banned. It was before this ban list, I think it was fully banned, and now it's coming back at 1 copy, which is super, super huge, and is kind of encouraging more of those multi-planet decks to kind of creep back in. Even at 1 copy, I still can't consider it like too strong. Like, even if you're running multi-planets, like, you still have to be careful, because you're only really getting 1 revive, and so the deck still has to have a lot of good synergy. You can't just slap a lot of good cards together and just pray for drawing 2 Soul Shrooms like you used to be able to. Rewind Wormhole, everyone rejoice. I really love that this is going down to 1 copy. It kind of gave me some similar effects to Point Turret, as I described earlier, where you work so hard to clear a board, put your combos together, use your resources to get some points, and then it's like instantly, I'm just gonna reset your points, like take 5 points away instantly. Although it affects both players, it can be significantly oppressive if you're going against a deck that's designed to kind of stall and drag the game out and then win in the very, very late game. So you can kind of just run out of gas, because this was at 2 copies and that was 10 points. And honestly, I feel like there were a lot of decks that don't have 30 plus points of damage output in the deck to really play through this type of card, especially just slapping it down for no cost. Warpo Jetpack, I like it at 1 copy. This is cool. I think it was at 2 copies, if I'm not mistaken, right before the ban list. It's just a really good card. It kind of functions like Tomb, except where it has to have the same amount of stars as the creature is attached to. So I'm not mad at that at all. Crozan being cut to 1. Crozan was on par with being just as oppressive as the double Shias Moons, as I mentioned before. So I completely understand why this is cut to 1. I still think Crozan is going to be a really, really, really strong deck, and I'll talk about that in the tier list. But yeah, I understand why they did that. For Self Sign, really good staple card. One copy is enough. You don't need to have two copies. I like that it's balanced like that. The biggest change, in my opinion, is Blaze Elixir being back. So Blaze Elixir was previously banned, and now it's at one copy. And so there's going to be some decks that kind of rise up from the graveyard, if I'm for lack of better words, as they have this card to help them increase their damage output. As you slap it on a card that was originally less than 300 power, and then now you can swing for 2 points. And so there's potential to hit things for 6 instead of 3, and sometimes even 4 instead of less than that. I'm sorry, sometimes 8 instead of less than that, depending on the card. I think Barrow can use it very usefully, as well as Solo Mancer for Gaios. As far as the unbanned section, Hexator coming off is really, really nice. However, I just think Shape Knights is not in a really good position overall. I have yet to come across a build that gives me confidence to run it, especially in a tournament setting. So I'll be curious to see if any Shape Knight fans are going to invest and try to figure out how to get the deck back on equal footing. Laji being unbanned is really nice, and the tower being unbanned is really nice. At this point, Laji is going to search Scarl and search for the tower instead of searching for Jocker, because Jocker's banned. So having it at 2 copies, I think is okay. Having the tower at 2 copies is pretty interesting, and I think there's some talks about whether or not that's going to be a problem, as you can do double tower to get double Scarl back, which there's a lot of burn damage there, and it's been one of my favorite decks to run right now, just after first glancing at the ban list. Bernard to 2. I kind of like this, as Bernard never really saw much play, even when I think it was limited to 1, if I'm not mistaken. There are some decks that are on Lurking in the Shadows that I think are going to be really, really strong with this card, but I would love to see it in action before I give my first critiques about it. I think it's going to be a really, really good card, but it's going to require some skill to position it and to keep it on the board, because when you play it, you basically want to get the impact immediately, as opposed to letting your opponent stop you from utilizing it. And then Offerings to Eos, which is really, really good. A very good resource card that adds a lot of consistency to Shios, which is you kill 2 creatures that are less than 6 but equal even number, and you get half of their stars. So it helps with the economy, and it helps you get those mill cards into the grave. Most notable target right now is Scarl of the Blue Flames. As you send it to grave with another 4-star copy, you get 4 stars. You bring it back with Undying Flame, and now you got a lot of consistent pressure per turn. And every turn that you bring it back, you get 1 point at the end of the turn when it dies. So yeah, that's it for the ban list. Very long-winded approach to it, but I hope you got a good understanding of my thought process so far. And let's jump right into the tier list. All right, so here we are. We're just gonna do tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and needs testing. As this is very, very early on in the format, I just picked some notable decks that have been around or could be coming back into play. In no way, shape, or form is this an exhaustive list of all the potential decks, but I think these cover a lot of the categories and the concepts that a deck can run, and I can give my opinion on what they would look like given the balance that we just went over. Okay, so let's go right in. So Shape Knights, I'm going to put in the needs testing section. Like I said before, I think they're really, really down bad until I see really good creature ratios. I am not confident in just relying on Hexator to get you all your damage. I'm not really confident in Trongulon being a consistent way to get Hexator. I'm not happy with the 1 copy of Polygram that's very vulnerable. And even 1 copy of Scorn, which was one of your main removal pieces to help you get damage. I'm not really seeing it. And I don't really like it in any planets that are multi-planets, as Lionel can really shoot you in the foot. Because whenever you do the Lionel Revive, which is basically like one of the best, connecting pieces to get your combos going, you can't play any other planets in that same turn. So, yeah, I don't have high hopes for Shape Knights as of right now. Next, this is going to be Roka, but Roka in the sense of Solomancer coming back. So I just put the moon to kind of represent Solomancer, but I also wanted to talk about just the Scardians in general. So the Scardian loops, I think, are very, very strong. You're losing out on 1 Serpent, which was a lot of people's responses, and you're also losing out on Gluh. And so those are like 2 very cheap removal pieces that kind of kept Scardians in check that are no longer there. So at first glance, I'm kind of feeling that there's some strong potential for it to really make its way back into the meta. Scardians are pretty much non-existent coming into this particular ban list. Prior to the ban list or during the tournaments, no one was really running them, but I think they can really creep their way back in, as some of the answers are no longer there. And with Solo Mancer being able to use Blaze now, there's some potential to run some Soul Shroom stuff, and you got one copy of Soul Shroom as well. So who knows? Roka could be making a really big comeback. Tier one, I'm gonna put Blue Flames. As of right now, the Logi plus Scarl plus Tower plus offerings to EOS, like that engine, and even though and you still have one Scoria, that engine is really, really strong. And with AAA being gone, you can run double firewalls. You also can run Crimson Grenades. And so I think it's just really, really positioned to play fast pace. A lot of decks lost their power levels, and they also lost a lot of consistency. But even with that being the case, this particular planet type still has a lot of utility to be consistent and figure out ways to get really, really big damage consistently. And I think that's going to be a very big theme, as you don't have a lot of monumental creations to rely on. The Glug Goop combo is a little bit different now, and it's already been adapted to by some Gaios players. So it's going to really, really come down to how well can you draw and how consistent your engine is. That's going to justify you being a really, really strong deck. Next, we got Burrow Bugs. I have some high hope for Barrel Bugs, except for the fact that I think the ratios are a little clunky to me. I've seen some testing in fight clubs with people running them, um, and like I see the potential, but a lot of it kind of comes down to you get that one good blaze swing. Something I am a big fan of is that their resource removal is really, really strong with the Desert Quake, and you also can use the Barock resource ability to kind of reshuffle cards and things like that. So I think there's a lot of potential there. I think it's still missing something. I don't know if it's a ratio thing or whatever the case may be, but I could easily see it jumping into tier two and being a really, really strong contender, especially if someone's willing to kind of put a lot of effort into it. And honestly, I'll leave it in tier two for now because I think some decks are going to struggle with swinging over these high healths. And so if you put this in the hands of a really good barrel player, someone who's patient and understands how to do the combos, it could really, really pop off. Next, we have Gehenna. Um, this is a very weird one for me. I think Gehenna has a lot of potential. But the way the meta is going to shape up, I don't know if necessarily playing a slower pace playstyle is going to be enough. Like, you don't have the two rewind wormholes to rely on. Um, a lot of decks, although their power levels went down, they still have ways to get decent damage. You still have blaze elixirs to worry about as they can power through boards. A lot of the monoplanet decks, especially decks that I'm going to put in tier one, I think can even play through Gehenna. And it's just taking up a lot of deck space. And that's what's really concerning to me too, is that it takes so many slots to even justify running Gehenna, in my opinion. Next, we have Crozon. I think Crozon is definitely still a tier one deck, especially in a best of three setting. Like, you're not really worrying about two Shockwave 8s anymore. You still have double Leviathan Crown, which has so much utility. Like, any card that will remove your 7 or 8-star creature, you can use Leviathan Crown to completely cancel that ability, which is super powerful. The Crozon engine is still searchable with Helpo Belt. And if you really want to double down, you can run 2 copies of Helpo Belt. Most of the time, 1 moon is enough to get you enough advantage. Even with Cert being cut to 1, you still have some of the strongest attackers in the game. The smaller creatures can still help you get through, and now you have more deck space to work with as far as like unique removal cards and stuff like that. So I think Crozon is very, very positioned well and needs to be very, very respected. Next, we have Sindel, specifically the gas combo. Um, this is an interesting one for me because I don't think it's necessarily that the Sindel deck got stronger. It's just more so that every other deck got a little bit weaker, and therefore it's in a better position. And so I probably would put it somewhere like this, like it's tier two, in my opinion, just off of like theory. And I think it can play super, super fast. And I think decks that can still go triple wide, have a really strong, consistent monoplanet engine are going to be the best performers in this format. Next, we have Gaios, specifically Gaios midrange. And honestly, these two I think are interchangeable, um, with Crowzen being like a close third. And I'll leave it like this for now. But I think Gaios midrange, especially with the new adaptation to how they use the tree, instead of Gla, they use Goral. So Goral is you can kill a Night Jungle resource card to gain 3 stars, and then that helps you pop the tree to draw 2 cards. What's also powerful about that too is that it's not once per turn. So if you have both of the trees in your hand and one Goral, you're gonna draw 4 cards, get 6 stars, and it's a 2-star. I'm sorry, 2-point attacker. So the deck still has a ton of consistency. It's one of the strongest monoplanet consistent engines, in my opinion. You still have your Zam trees, you still have Truant, you still have double temple traps, and you have temple traps that goes unchecked as there's no triple A's in play anymore now. And so this deck in the hands of a really good player could very well be the best deck in format. Not to mention you have Solar Mancer jumping back into the fray. And so I think the strongest version of this is where you have a Giles mid-range build, slap in one Guardian of the Moon, maybe use Universe Boundary to mill it. And now you have the strong Giles engine, and now you have the high power level of a Solo Mancer with Blaze Elixir. Next, we're going into Teklar, basically Teklar mid range. I think it's actually in a really, really decent spot. Um, I don't think I can put it quite over gas, but I think I can put it over bugs. And the reason is that it's just going to get really, really good as it has a lot of unique utility, a lot of good tools, especially with things like safety cables, Enderman's Telescope, Hydron, Talakon being a little bit sticky if you have the right combo set up. And so it's just a matter that every other deck got a little bit weaker. And so this deck has an opportunity to really, really, really shine. Next, we have Ozos. Now, Ozos, I really want to put in tier 3, but for now, I'll put at the top of needs testing. And the reason I'm doing this is because, yes, you can run the baby Ozos, which is a really good search engine, which helps you thin out your deck. But then it's like, what's the other idea? What's the other point? What's your win con, should I say? Because you don't have 2 Soul Shrooms to rely on like you used to. You don't have 2 Abominations Tombs to rely on either. And I also ran this deck with the Serpent package, but now you have Serpent 1 copy. And so it's just a matter of like, you have some good cards that are available to be used, but is it better as an engine or can it still work as a full deck? And that is what I'm trying to still wrap my head around. We'll love to see someone pick it up and see how they can make it work. I've also seen honorable mention to the gadgets deck running around. Gadgets, I'm not the best at explaining it, but basically you use the mini Ozos as well as a search engine, and then you use other utility cards to be in a more controlling fashion against your opponent. But once again, with Rewind Wormhole being cut to 1, maybe it's not as strong as it used to be. So I feel like maybe a tier 3, but for now I'll put needs testing. Roka mid-range, I think, is at the top of tier 3. Very, very strong deck, in my opinion. I almost want to say needs testing, and I almost want to put it at the bottom of tier 2. It's kind of weird. And so to a happy medium, I think it's top of tier 3. But the interesting thing about this deck is that there's a lot of hand disruption. There's a lot of hand knowledge, and that can be very, very useful. And with the field having less opportunities to draw outside of these top 3 decks, it could really just be very oppressive. Because if you start sniping cards from their hand, using like Dark Matter or Eye of Evilness, or if you know what's in their hand and you play around it, you can really, really get a good advantage, especially if you slap in the Scardian core as well. Naturally, Soul Shroom decks, I want to put at the bottom of needs testing, but in theory, I'll just put it as bottom of tier 3. You have 1 copy of Soul Shroom, which basically helps you get recursion. So you have 4 different planets. You can get any card from those 4 different planets, which is super, super powerful, even at 1 copy. The thing is, I think you also need to run 2 Forces of Justice to kind of justify the strategy, because I think waiting to get 4 different planets killed and you got to hope that those 4 different planet types synergize very, very well, especially when you're competing against the consistency of the decks that are above them. Just to hope to get another card back is kind of a lot to hope for, if you ask me. But yeah, this is my take on the tier list. Like I said, this is just kind of my first impressions, kind of theory crafting a little bit. I'm going to see how the format shapes out. I have been able to test, I believe, 5 out of these top few. And so just from my experience, this is what I'm kind of noticing, as far as like decks that I can just easily pick up and play, decks that I put some time into, and decks that I've seen other top players use as well. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you like this style of video, let me know with a like and a comment below. Join the Chaos Galaxy game if you have not already, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.